life's just too short to work with people you don't enjoy. And they're going to be ups and downs, especially in an early stage company. And you want to be doing it with people you enjoy and people you trust. And so, at the end of the day in sales, hey, you're responsible for a number. That's what we're judged on. But how you get there, that can vary. I think, taking every conversation as an opportunity to learn. And so even if you end up losing a deal, have you learned something from it? Or you hear something in one conversation with a VP of operations. The next time you talk to a VP of operations, say, hey, I was just talking to someone else and here's what I heard. And either they're going to say, yeah, that's true. Or, well, no, I actually think of it a different way. But either way, one, you've built some credibility with that VP of operations. And two, you're continuing to learn. And so you're either going to double down on what you knew, or you're going to find a new point to talk about.
All right. Really exciting. Today on the show, we have Brian Lawrence. Brian's the VP of Sales at Clazar, which helps B2B SaaS companies launch and manage their cloud marketplace offerings. Prior to that, he was VP of Sales at Airslate and HelloSign. He's had a very particular style of building and scaling successful sales teams for unicorn companies. It has to do with leading with empathy. So today, we're going to talk about how you can infuse empathy into your sales process to achieve remarkable results. One particular example that comes to mind that we'll go through was how empathizing with customers paved the way for a new go-to-market motion that helped grow revenue from $2 million in ARR with a sales-led sales motion to $30 million ARR by transitioning to a product and content-led sales motion. Brian, it's great to have you on the show today.
Alan, good to talk to you. Thanks so much for having me.
So why don't we jump into a quick 1-minute background about yourself and how you got to where you are today?
Yeah. So, I started my software career as an SDR at Oracle, the time second largest software company in the world. And from there, I went to a company called Webmetrics. I led the sales team there, built the sales organization, and just kind of realized that what I love to do in life professionally is help build and scale early stage companies. So, had the opportunity to do that at HelloSign and Airslate, and now doing that at Clazar and having a lot of fun along the way.
That's awesome. You've seen companies grow to huge heights. You started small, you scale it all the way up. You've had such an experience here. What's interesting, I was also noticed that out of your MBA program, you did a brief internship in finance, and then you went right back into sales. Any quick comments about what that was like?
I did. I discovered my competitive advantage in life was not my ability to master spreadsheets. And so, I was there, I was checking out all these interesting software companies, and it kind of reinforced to me, hey, what I love to do is build, not analyze. And so went right back into industry and been doing that ever since, and glad I made that decision.
Yeah, double down on the conviction. I also came from finance and I totally get it. So you scale teams to billion-dollar unicorns. That's not easy. Why do you think you were so successful in rising through the ranks and getting there to leadership positions and then building this team?
I think one of the things first and foremost is I've had some amazing mentors, some people who bet on me along the way. When I was at Oracle, I had 6 jobs in 4 years at Oracle. So I was an SDR, SMB, AE, general business AE, and then I ended up being a manager for each of those 3 groups. And so I was one of the youngest managers in the world at Oracle. And I had a VP, a woman named Linda Schluter, who she took a chance on me. She mentored me, saw things in me, and just encouraged me and helped me. And I'm just so grateful for those type of people who helped get me where I am. And so I try to give back in that same way. And so, one of the great thrills for me is hiring someone who is an SDR and then seeing them get to move into new roles, and then they become directors and VPs of sales, or they move into customer success and have, lots of phenomenal success from there. And so that's one of the things I really try to invest in.
It's really cool. You're building your own dynasty. I'm really curious what your manager at the time, when you were the youngest promoted manager, what did they say in your performance review? It was like, man, Brian is such a sharp person. He prospects. What was the thing that you think that set you apart from all the other folks who maybe didn't rise to the ranks as quick as you did?
I think part of it was I was always just willing to learn. And, I think that put in the work and learn, and just surrounding myself with great people, not being afraid to ask, hey, how are you doing that? What's leading to that success? And I found people were incredibly generous in sharing things, and probably enough people didn't approach them and ask for that type of advice. And so I think that gave me an unfair advantage, that I was just really willing to put myself out there and ask and learn, and then just incorporate that into what I was doing. And, I think those same people who I asked those questions, I think that kind of gives them a vested interest as well in your success. Like, they're rooting for you. They help you along. And so I think that compounds in multiple ways.
And that makes a lot of sense, and how that might have transitioned into your leadership style of being very empathetic and collaborative. Can we talk a little bit more about that, and how you infuse authenticity and collaboration and empathy into your leadership style?
Yeah. I start with, I tell anyone I hire that my number one rule is my no asshole policy on hiring people. And that, life's just too short to work with people you don't enjoy. And they're going to be ups and downs, especially in an early stage company. And you want to be doing it with people you enjoy and people you trust. And so, at the end of the day in sales, hey, you're responsible for a number. That's what we're judged on. But how you get there, that can vary. And so I've seen, I think one of the mistakes sometimes people make, especially in early stage, they see someone who's put up superstar numbers and they hire that person, even though they might be toxic. And, so someone once asked me, what my view on toxic superstars was. And I said, I think that's a contradiction in terms. If you're toxic, I don't think you can be a superstar, even though you might put up some big numbers. You're going to ruin the team. And so I want people who I enjoy being around, who the rest of my team enjoys being around. And I think that, every hire that we make, especially at the earlier stage, not just that they're a culture fit, but that they're a culture add as well, that they bring something new to the team. And that's how you build diversity and have multiple selling styles, and you learn from each other. And that's the thing I've always tried to build with my sales teams.
Yeah, it's this very collaborative culture where you're bringing in new things, very empathetic. And it's different from some of the other sales leaders or some of the leaders I've seen in the space. Normally, when I think of VP of sales, I think of like someone that's going to rule with fire and brimstone if you don't achieve results. It's results, results, results. And then you took a different approach, or at least to me, it's very unique, where you're saying, I'm going to bring in people who may not, on paper, may not be superstars, or they are superstars, or you're focusing on superstars and collaborative, but I'm not going to sacrifice collaboration. I'm going to create this culture. We're going to collaborate. We're all going to win together. And just curious how you're able to cultivate that, especially when there's so many people that you need to hire. And every now and then there might be like a superstar that slips through the cracks who's a little bit toxic. So how did you create the culture? What did you do? And why do you think this works?
Yeah. So I think that, probably the biggest regrets I have is when I've hired someone and had red flags and gone ahead and justified it to myself and said, well, maybe we really need someone. Let me look past this. And I think every time I've done that, it's come back to bite me. And so, I've learned to really take the time to make sure someone is just an outstanding hire. And, I want to hire people who, like, when we end an interview, when they walk out the door, I'm disappointed because I'm like, no, I want them to stay. That's what I'm looking for. And, one of the amazing things is that high performers attract other high performers. And so once you get those first few who've joined your team, then they know other high performers, and other high performers want to come and be there, and they want to compete and collaborate with those same type of people. And so, I'm in a fortunate position now where when we do hiring, we don't post a whole lot on job boards or use outside recruiters and things like that. It's a lot of it from the network and from myself, from the people on my team. And, we get referrals, and that means a lot to me. And so we're able to vet people and find really high quality people at this point just because of the network and because of what we've built so far.
That's amazing. And you said so yourself, you're one of the fastest promoted managers. You are a high performer. You're able to attract high performers. When you move companies, you bring those high performers in with you. And that sort of sets the culture of the place, which is high performance, collaborative, it seems like, and also very empathetic.
Yeah. And I think it's one of the things, people ask me about like when they're interviewing and stuff. And, interviews are a two-way street. Like the company has to sell themselves just as much as the candidate does. And, I think it's really fair for a candidate to look in and understand that manager's style and look at their track record and understand, hey, have people who've worked for that person before come along to this new company? Are they able to attract and retain people? Or do they look and the tenure of everyone at the company is like, it's all brand new people? That's a flag.
Oh, that's a really good point. I got to remember that for some of my questions if I ever go back to the job market as well. What's the longest tenured person on your team? What are they like? Yeah, it's really good. So coming back into the sales process for a moment, you had a particular example, and I know you have many more, of how you used empathy and customer empathy to drive a change in your sales process that led to remarkable outcomes. I think it was at HelloSign. Can we talk through that a little bit?
Yeah. So when I joined HelloSign, there had been a strategy to go after an HelloSign electronic signature company, and to go after insurance agencies, especially smaller ones, with the idea that this is a paper intensive area. Most of these agencies are kind of behind the times and still using paper based processes, and this would be a good target market. And so we had some initial success there. But as we were doing that, we also had this API that we had built, and we started noticing that people without a whole lot of effort were signing up for this API, and they were starting to use it more and more. And we really had some spirited conversations at HelloSign, but we shifted our entire go-to-market to focus on selling this API that people use to embed within their own applications where they needed e-signature. And that was really transformational. And I think that was a real catalyst in helping us go from, a couple $1 million in revenue to around 30 million after when Dropbox bought us as a company.
And then how did you decide to make that transition?
Yeah, it was a little bit of a combination of, there is some gut feel to it, as well as some data and analytics behind it. And so we saw enough patterns that we said, I think this is worth investing more in. And from there, one of the things we had to do was change our selling motion, because now we're suddenly selling to developers and we're no longer selling to the office manager for an insurance agency. And so having SDRs pick up the phone and call developers, not very effective. And so we really rethought our entire sales motion and made it much more around the developer experience and providing them with great documentation, letting them easily use the API and start testing, and standing things up like that. And it changed how we did content. And so like the most popular piece of content at HelloSign was about our own API, and it was 10 mistakes we made with building our API. And people, I think that authenticity and that just very tactical, like, hey, here's what we wish we had known, that really resonated with developers. And so that filled our funnel, and we started learning how to communicate with them, making sure they had what they need. And then we would bring in the business owner who would be in charge of making the purchasing decision. So we had this like multi-pronged sales approach, and that really changed, accelerated how quickly we grew as a company.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think it's really cool to be talking to your customers. It's just as cool to be talking to the persona types within your own company because they can answer honestly. We have something similar to ourselves. Like we have Keegan, our head of sales, and he is the RevOps expert. So he can speak very intelligently to revenue operations, which is the space that we sell in. And I guess similarly for you guys, if you're VP of engineering or CTO or engineers, if it resonates with them, then that's a pretty good sign. In general, because I know that you've done this in the past, and you probably apply customer empathy to every company you've been to, what is some of like the quick tricks that salespeople, sales reps can do to stay abreast on the industry, stay abreast on the trends of the people they're selling into?
Yeah, I think, taking every conversation as an opportunity to learn. And so even if you end up losing a deal, have you learned something from it? Or, you hear something in one conversation with a VP of operations. The next time you talk to a VP of operations, say, hey, I was just talking to someone else and here's what I heard. And either they're going to say, yeah, that's true. Or, Well, no, I actually think of it a different way. But either way, one, you've built some credibility with that VP of operations. And two, you're continuing to learn. And so you're either going to double down on what you knew or you're going to find a new point to talk about.
Makes a lot of sense. Any other tips or advice on how you could be an expert in a space or industry? I find this stuff fascinating because sales reps, they have to move around a lot. They change companies. What's the fastest playbook to learn the space and industry that you need to sell into outside of that?
Yeah, I think one of my biggest pieces of advice is sell something that you're interested in, that you actually understand and want to learn about. And so, I put like on my LinkedIn profile that one of my criteria is that like, hey, can I explain in a sentence or two what the company does to my mother-in-law? And making sure I can distill it down. And so for me, like these cloud marketplaces that, Clazar supports, so AWS and GCP, Azure, what's happening there, I think is so fascinating. So it fits into work. And so, I think there's maybe a temptation. Certainly, a lot of us in sales have been in a job that we're eager to get out of and things like that. And it's hard to see past that. But I think if you're able to find things that you're truly interested in and passionate about, that shows. And it's like sale fun, like inject some personality, bring that to the sale. And so the more you can do that, I think the more successful you'll be in the long term.